All right, well, I think we should get started. Welcome everyone to the Honours Induction Afternoon. My name is Andrew Carpre. I'm one of the Deputy Managers of the CASS Student Office. Before we go on, I just want to acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respects to the elders past and present. Yes, so I just want to let you all know that we will be recording this session and it will be available to students. We will be sending it out at some point. Yes, so first of all, yes, just welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome Associate Professor Jeff Hinchcliffe, who is the Associate Dean for Education for CASS, as well as our other guests, Mitchell Whitelaw and Jenny Davis, who are our academics who will be speaking today, as well as we have hopefully three students who have gone through the process and come out unscathed, who will be giving their tips and tricks for a good honours year. So yeah, I'll just move on to the next slide. And I'll throw the ball over to Jeff, and he'll have a little bit to say. So thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. Echoing Andrew's welcome and acknowledgement of country. I'm on Ngunnawal land here in beautiful Canberra, and very happy to be here. So yeah, I don't have a big role to play today. Mainly, I just wanted to show my face and say hi to you all. So I'm the Associate Dean Education for the college, but I'm also involved in honours, as the convener of the honours program and the thesis courses. So just straight away, there's a couple of things I'll do today. The first one is that I'll point to a few structural things that will help you that are sort of more housekeeping-y. The other thing is just be super enthusiastic about honours. Not because it's my job, but because it really is an awesome year. I think, if you can think of your undergraduate studies, starting wide, breadth, where you can build your disciplinary knowledge and, sample a lot of things. Honours is really sort of like a pointy end to a big cone where maybe you gather up all that knowledge and experience, and honours gives you an opportunity to really focus it in, to sort of show what you can do with the special powers that you spent, 3, 4, 5 years acquiring. So yeah, it's unlike anything you probably experienced before. Maybe you've had tastes of it in particular courses, but having a whole year that is really built around your own research project is just such an incredible and rare pleasure. So it's tough, it's a challenging year at times, sure, but it's just so fantastic to have that opportunity. So really relish it. I think, in terms of why you're here and what you're hoping to get out of honours, I think you'll hear from our student speakers and from Mitchell and Jenny, I'm sure, that there's actually a broad array of reasons for why you might do honours and what you can get out of it. It's definitely a very well-established pathway to further higher study. If you want to do a PhD, an honours year is a fantastic pathway. Very well trod in a research intensive university like ANU. That is definitely the well trod pathway to a PhD. But increasingly people pursue honours for all sorts of other reasons too, perhaps less so about pursuing an academic career and more about, actually going into the world. And so using honours as another opportunity to really tailor their skills, knowledge, and build something for a particular application out in the world. And so, yeah, that's becoming more and more a likely, motivation for you to be doing honours, and it does work. It really does. So in terms of those, a couple of those structural things, honours, you are doing honours within a particular field, that's definitely like attached to the degree that you studied. And so predominantly you're going to deal with people that you already know, in your discipline, that your supervisor and the convener of the honours program in your discipline. That's kind of your main port of call. There's the CASS student office, Andrew's here representing them, and they can be of assistance regarding anything to do with your studies, enrollment, what courses to study when, that sort of thing. And my involvement is sort of overseeing the thesis component. So all of our programs in CASS, half of the program is the thesis in whatever shape that takes. And so I'm sort of associated with that actually. So yeah, it's a slightly more tangential involvement really. It's your supervisors that are your primary contacts and will really be your custodians. But all that said, yeah, I'm super enthusiastic about honours. I can't wait to hear from our speakers and look forward to your questions in question time. So back to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I couldn't agree more. It's a very exciting year. Yeah, it's a very fulfilling year in a lot of ways. It can be a bit hair pulling out in as well, but I think it's all worth it in the end. Now, speaking of questions, you can put them in the chat. We also will have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end, or you can just raise your hand. Yeah, feel free to put them in the chat as we go along, and then we will have time for questions later on. All right, now, without any further ado, let us move on to our student panel. Now, these are some students who have gone through the process, they, like I said, have come out the other side refreshed and renewed. Would you say that? All right, so we have three. We have Anna Stewart Yates, and she did her Bachelor of Art History and Curatorship honours last year, finishing last year. We have Rachel Chopping, who was in the previous PhD program and did English as her thesis topic discipline, and Eleanor Foster, who was also in PhD, who was in the history part of discipline. So Anna, on my screen, you are directly to my right. Would you like to have a go first?
Yeah, for sure, Andrew. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Anna. I did complete my honours in art history and curatorship at the end of last year. Not only did I live to tell the tale, but it can't have been that bad because I'm now writing another thesis. I'm writing my law thesis at the moment. So maybe I just forgot the bad parts, but it was a great year. If anyone's interested, the title of my art history thesis was Modernist Japaneseness, a genealogy of intercultural design exchange. I think the structure of your honours year might vary a bit depending on if you're doing honours in arts or as part of a PhD. If you're doing art history like me, then your honours is made up of coursework and a year-long internship and a thesis that you write over the course of the year, which, yes, can feel like a lot of moving parts. But regardless of how your honours year is structured, I think time management is going to be the #1 most important thing for you to think about now and to keep thinking about throughout the year. You may or may not have worked on a research project of this scale before. So the best place to start, of course, is to break it down into more manageable sections that you can tackle one by one. You can think of each chapter as a separate paper, which is closer to the scale of the papers which we write in undergrad coursework. The other crucial thing to consider with the managing of your time is how to keep yourself accountable. You might have some individual assessments along the way, but ultimately for your thesis, there's one big deadline at the end of the year that really matters. And it's up to you to set milestones along the way and hold yourself accountable to those milestones to ensure that you actually have a thesis to show for yourself by the time you get to the end of the year. I found it really effective to have a fixed fortnightly meeting with my supervisor and really use it as a deadline. I always tried to make sure that I had some new work to present to my supervisor each fortnight. In first semester, that might have been a new methodology that I had investigated or a new group of sources that I'd tackled. But by second semester, I think it's really important to be bringing writing to your meetings with your supervisor, even if it's just a paragraph and not a whole chapter in the first instance. for both you and your supervisor, it's pretty much impossible to tell whether you're actually on the right track until you stop talking about what you're going to write and start actually bringing in your writing. Of course, starting to write is the most daunting part of the whole process, or at least I found it to be. Right now, you're looking down the barrel of this big long-term project. And if you're anything like me, you're probably also putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You're thinking, this is my honours year, this is the culmination of a few years of study. I need to come up with something exceptional, leave no stone unturned in my research, etc. But when you start having those expectations of yourself, that's when it feels impossible to start writing anything at all, because it won't be perfect on the first go. In fact, in my experience, it will never be perfect, no matter how many drafts you go through. When you start the writing process, good enough is your best friend. I'm not saying you shouldn't aim to do your best work, and it's really important to leave enough time for yourself towards the end of the year to redraft, rework, and polish your thesis into the masterpiece that you want it to be. But at the start, you've got to let go of those really high expectations and focus on getting words on the page. Writing is thinking, and writing anything is better than nothing. Once you have something to work with, then you can reshape it to your heart's content, but you have to start somewhere. I found the experience of writing my thesis hugely enjoyable and rewarding. I'm sure you can all relate to the thrill of researching something you're really excited about. But sometimes it can also feel like the end of the world when you just can't seem to bring yourself to write, or you get stuck on an issue, or you're struggling to meet the competing demands of coursework, internships, and writing. I think the best first step that you can take is to make the decision right here and now that you can and you will finish your thesis, and then just don't revisit that question. Don't even let the thought that I can't do this enter your head. Remember that it doesn't have to be perfect, especially at the start of the process. Rough and ready is the way to go. Set milestone deadlines for yourself and take them seriously, and ask your supervisor to hold you accountable too. And finally, when you experience those moments where you find the perfect source, or you answer a seemingly insoluble structural problem, or you're in a flow state and you're really hitting your stride with your argument, take a moment to marvel at and savor this special joy that you've earned for yourself. Good luck.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. That's some wise words from someone who knows. All right. So next up, we have Rachel. Rachel, are you there, Rachel? Great. All righty. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel. I did my English honours last year. My thesis was on illness memoirs and the figure of the madwoman in Australian women's writing, which is fascinating, I can assure you. I loved it. I really enjoyed the entire year. Obviously, as Anna was saying, you have highs and lows, but as overall, I'm really glad that I did honours. I have now since moved to Melbourne, and I'm finished my bachelor and now I'm doing a master's. I guess the English course was structured in a way that was a lot of coursework in semester 1, and then a lot of actual thesis writing in semester 2. And I really liked how that was structured. It was a lot of good chapter drafting and getting feedback from peers and lecturers. And then by the time it was kind of crunch time, everyone had a lot of practice already under their belt and we're good to go. I think I would go with everything Anna said. Those kind of routines and making your advisor hold you accountable is really good advice. I saw my advisor a lot less. I didn't feel the need to have really strict meeting times. I think we tried to do a fortnightly meeting and it wasn't really working for us. So we decided to meet whenever I had a big chunk of text to show her, or I really needed a question, and that ended up being more like every 3 weeks or more if I needed. And we really focused on meeting up a lot more often closer to the due date. Similar to that, I would just recommend that you have a friend to show your work to. Like, I shared a lot of chapter drafts just with other people in the honours cohort before I showed my advisor, and it was a lot less pressure to show a really polished piece of work. It was a bit more casual, but it still was something that pushed me to finish a piece of text. And so I think every bit helps, and every edit helps as well. So in that sense, like, find what works for you. Don't feel pressure to stick to someone else's deadlines or routines. It might not work. I think I tried a lot of things that I thought would work for me, and then it didn't really work, and you just kind of have to go with your own flow a little bit. One other thing that really worked for me was planning really far ahead and researching, picking up bits for later chapters as I went. Like, as I was writing chapter 1, I was reading widely, I would pick something up for chapter 3 and note it down, and then by the time you get to later on in the project, you have all these little resources ready to go. And that wasn't necessarily like a full paragraph or research topic for it, but it was like helpful tidbits that I think made a lot of difference along the line. Yeah, no regrets, honestly.
That's good to hear. So another fabulous little insight into the honours year. Thank you so much, Rachel. And our third speaker, student speaker today is Eleanor Foster. Hello, Eleanor. Come in, Eleanor.
Hello, Andrew. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, all the advice given has been really excellent, and I echo all of that. So I'll just add a couple of extra things that I found really helpful. So I guess in the first few weeks of semester, it's all really daunting. So something that I did was make a really loose plan of what I thought my chapters might be about. I identified the primary archive or source base or text that would form like the evidence of that chapter. And I kind of allocated how many words I thought would go in that chapter, because while 20,000 does seem like a lot, my maths wasn't great, and I wrote an introduction to be 5,000, and then each chapter was also 5,000. That didn't leave me anything for the conclusion. So just try and nut that out and just kind of show it to your supervisor and get any initial feedback. I also provided like a tentative due date of when I wanted to get intro chapters and conclusion finished. And you know, your supervisor most likely has supervised a lot of honours students in the past. So if you have this idea that they don't think would necessarily work, they're going to tell you, and it's really good to get that feedback straight away. Something else I found that I learned from the experience was that I think during an arts degree, you're used to researching and writing a piece and then moving on to the next thing. You don't really revisit it. So when I wrote my first chapter, I wasn't really expecting to have to redraft it multiple times, but when my supervisor gave me feedback, it just ended up that way. So with your chapters, they're never going to be final. And even if you put a lot of work into it, kind of expect it to be nearly done, your supervisor will bring a whole lot of other ideas, and you just have to be willing to constantly redraft it and not take it too personally. Like Rachel, I shared my thesis with a lot of friends and colleagues and peers throughout the year. So I think about 5 people in the end read it. That was really helpful because everybody is going to bring a different set of eyes to it, whether it be from a structural perspective, editing, phrasing, historical argument. In my case, it was all really helpful. I also think keeping track of your references is really important. So for history, I think I ended up having like 300 references or something like that. So I really needed some kind of software to keep all my PDFs together. So I ended up using EndNote, and EndNote's not perfect, but it worked for me. And it just was really helpful to keep track of everything. Also, like Rachel said, you'll be having coursework. So for history, it was 50% thesis, 50% coursework. So it kind of meant that I had to put equal effort into the coursework if I wanted to get the honours grade that I wanted. So try to keep a kind of equal perspective, and even if the coursework isn't directly relevant to your thesis, you're still going to have to do your best if you want it all to kind of pan out nicely together in the end. So I think that's about it from me.
Terrific. Sound like you're super organized, Eleanor. Yay for you. Yeah, EndNote is great software to use. The library offer EndNote training sessions that are extremely useful. So yeah, you might like to have a look on the library website for when the next one is. All right, so moving on, we're moving on to our academic panelists now. And we have both Mitchell Whitelaw and also we've got Jenny Davis from sociology. I'll just, hello Mitchell, are you there? Over.
Hi Andrew, yes, as soon as I find the unmute button, here I am.
Fabulous. Thank you for today. So today, could you also tell us a little bit about how you approach honours and your students that you're supervising, as well as a little bit about maybe the research you're doing yourself, a little bit of a an inspirational kind of chat as well. That would be great to hear.
Sure.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes overall?
Yeah, about 10, up to you.
Great. I'm just going to share my screen. And I'll do the sort of intro bit first. So lovely to meet you folks. I'm feeling a bit honours deprived this year because I actually don't have any honours. Well, actually, no, it's not true. I do. I have one honours student who's finishing mid-year. So I, like everyone else, have a huge soft spot for honours. And so, yeah, so welcome, have a fantastic time. Yeah, it's the best. I've got lots of thoughts about honours. I'll just really quickly introduce my work. I'm a designer, maker, creative person, and you can tell from the way I define myself that I'm not someone who has ever really sat in a fixed or final way in a particular field or discipline. And so some of what I'm going to say a bit later on is about that sort of relationship between honours and sort of the discipline and disciplinarity, which I'll give you my 2 cents on that. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about some of the research that I've been doing and maybe also how it changed, because one of the things that honours can be your entire world, and it is your entire world for that year, which is super great. But one of the themes that I'll come back to is, yes, it is your entire world and you should immerse yourself in it with great gusto, but also don't worry because it actually doesn't and will not define you unless you want it to. I did my honours, I should have got it up. I did my honours project on the most obscure topic you have ever heard of. I'm actually a musician by training, so that sort of gives you a sense of where I come from. Although I'd also studied visual arts at Wollongong Uni at the same time. My honours involved a crazy digital sound installation involving lots of computers sitting in a room recording and playing back sound. And the actual dissertation, the theoretical part of my dissertation was a study of a really obscure American kind of sound art composer called Charles Amakanian. So if you want to hear some wacky stuff, look up the work of Charles Amakanian. That work was really great and I had a fantastic time, but it has like only really tangentially anything to do with the work I'm doing now. And yeah, and to me that is kind of good and liberating. I do a lot of creative work in my research, and the other theme that I would highlight is I'm increasingly someone who just habitually works in partnerships and collaborations. And that is something that I'm finding is increasingly really sustaining. And that's also something that's maybe interesting for you, because I know in the humanities, research, that is, particularly at honours levels, quite unusual to be doing your work with other people. That's been one of actually the great joys of my research trajectory, has been moving from being a sole practitioner where I do all my work by myself to being someone who works with other people all the time. So another reason why there's more to your journey than this kind of work. The work that I do is creative and it's always collaborative. And increasingly, it's also actually, I guess you could say, applied. In other words, I'm doing work that is out there in the world doing things. This project is kind of a crazy one, but maybe an apt one. This project involved the creation of a physical habitat structure in collaboration with American architect Joyce Wang. And we had an amazing collaboration that we then wrote up as a kind of study of the way that interdisciplinary collaboration can work. But I've done lots of collaborations with Jeff, who's in the call with us now. So this work, My Climate 2050, is one with Jeff. So is this one, Corley Explorer. So is this Climate Posters work, which is a fantastic project that we did with the folks in the Climate Change Institute. So I won't go into great detail about any of that stuff, other than, I guess, to say, for me, sorry about the noise, what continues to really sustain me and keep me going as a researcher and an academic is the process of making work which is kind of really connected with the world and with other people. Which brings me to the second kind of thing that I want to say, which is just a real quick presentation here. I've been thinking a bit about honours and about these ideas of kind of focus. So you could kind of conceptualize maybe where you're starting as something a bit like this. There's a field which you're kind of working in, it might be literary studies, for example, and there's some stuff that you already know, and you already know actually quite a bit about that field, but there's also quite a lot of other stuff you know, right, that is not in that field. And of course, there's still heaps of your field that you are yet to find out about. Now, in honours, what you do is often something like this. You kind of find a topic, which is something you're really interested in, something your supervisor's really interested in, and you get really excited about. And then within that topic, that's the kind of zone that you're investigating, there's this precious gem, which is the question, the focus of your investigation, the thing that you're going to be really asking. And determining that topic and arriving at that question rightly takes up a lot of time in honours. And that dynamic of kind of honing things in, focusing in, refining is a really important one. It is this force of kind of focusing, which is a really key dynamic in honours. It's a key dynamic in all research actually, but in honours it's super intense because you only have a year to not only focus the thing, but do it as well, do the research. So that force of focus, I would say, first of all, is good and necessary. I'm not knocking focus at all. It is absolutely essential to you doing what you need to do in honours. So embrace the force of focus. It is essential. But I'll now offer a kind of counterpoint to that. But there's actually more happening, right? There's more happening all over the place. There's a lot of things that you know that are not related to your topic, yeah? All kinds of stuff, whether that's like, you know, how to make a really great turmeric latte or, you know, something about your favorite, you know, football team. You know a lot of stuff. You also actually care about a lot of stuff and are interested in a lot of stuff. There are things that matter to you. There are things that you're curious about. There are things that you want to know more about. And then also there's everything else in the world that is happening all at the same time, from, you know, Russia invading the Ukraine to the urgency of the climate crisis. Wow, I just turned the power off in my office. So there's a lot of other stuff, right, which is kind of happening around your honours situation. And my argument is basically this, that you should also be alert to the possibility of connection and of context. So find the points where the thing you're doing is actually related to or connected to all of that other stuff that is happening. It might be stuff that is elsewhere in your field. It might be stuff that's elsewhere in your own knowledge, in your experience. It might be points where it connects with your values or with the things that you care about in the world. Or it might actually be just stuff that's elsewhere out there in the world, people, places, businesses, opportunities, jobs, etc., etc. So look for those connections, because to me, they are really precious. For me, they're the things that really sustain me. And I reckon if you can establish those connections, they will feed and sustain you as well. Focus is fantastic, but let me just scroll back a bit. But that can be a lonely place. if you live there 100% of the time, 24/7, if that's your entire world, then I don't think that's actually that great for a person, really, for a whole year. So I think, if nothing else, just for your own well-being, it's really great to maintain those connections. That's my 2 cents. Just really finally, more arguments for context and connection. For me, it keeps me grounded, i.e. connected to the world, which is a way of checking in and me reminding myself, this thing that I'm working on, where does it actually, how does it fit with everything else? What's it actually doing? It hugely stimulates thinking. So it provides you all kinds of lateral connections, all kinds of things you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. It also provokes questions like, yeah, why does this matter? And it actually builds relationships. So it links you with people and other parts of the institution. And it opens up possibilities, which gets you thinking about, what can we do next? What else is there? What more is there to do other than that thing? Sorry about that banging, it's awful. I'm nearly finished. I've just got one more thing, which is actually a plug for a different citation management software. Everyone, EndNote's been getting some love. EndNote is good. I personally really like Zotero. It's a different flavor, it does the same thing. But yeah, check out Zotero as well. All right, I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. Yeah, I think we were going to give a little bit of a plug for Zotero as well. In a bit of an even context, EndNote, Zotero, people can make their own minds up. Yeah, and that banging was quite intense. You must work in a very creative building, maybe?
It's one that's being kind of renovated right now, unfortunately.
Oh, well, these things. So thank you again, Mitchell. Our next speaker is Jenny Davis from Sociology. Jenny, hello.
Hello, and thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Mitchell. So I had some things to share with you, but I decided instead we should just have a all-out brawl debate about Zotero versus EndNote. So if people want to jump in, no, I'm just kidding. So I'm an EndNote person. However, I work with Zoteros, and I feel like we can all get along. So yeah, so I should forewarn you also that I'm not nearly as polished or prepared as was Mitchell. So you had your best for first. So I'm Jenny Davis. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Sociology. One of the things that's really interesting to me, that's been really interesting to me about honors is that as you can potentially hear from my accent, I did not come up in the Australian system. I'm from the US. And so honors in the US is something really different than what you have here. Honors would be sort of incorporated into your university degree, and it would mean something really different. It would mean you like took a little bit, a few more courses, a little bit more advanced. Whereas here, what you're doing in an honors year is something really special. And it's something that when I first came here, I was so struck by, I kind of jumped right in and was really enthusiastic about becoming involved in supervision because I'd never seen sort of undergraduate research operate at that level before. So it's an opportunity that at a global scale is something really special. Just to say really briefly about myself and my work. So I work at the intersection of social psychology and technology studies. That's currently anchored through sort of 3 big projects, but there's lots of little things going on, as I'm sure any academic will tell you. When asked to summarize their work, it always feels like a bit of a crude over summarization, right? You like miss all the nuance. But the 3 major projects that sort of anchor my work are: one, I'm part of the Humanizing Machine Intelligence project at ANU, which is part of what used to be called the Grand Challenge Scheme, and it's a multi-year, multidisciplinary project to try to understand and intervene in ethics in AI technologies and machine learning. A second project that I'm, sort of major project that I'm involved in is called the Role Taking Project. Thanks, I see Jeff is sharing the links. And yes, the next one is the Role Taking Project. He probably doesn't have that link right off the bat. But so here we're looking at how people understand one another, how you put yourself in someone else's shoes. We're looking at who's better at it and who's worse at it. We're looking at how to make people better at it when we can, and we're looking at the conditions under which that operates. And we're often doing that we're using a lot of different methodologies, but that includes laboratory experimental methods, which is unusual for sociology. So ANU School of Sociology, close to empathy. Jeff, we'll have to talk about that later. But it's a better construct than empathy. So we have a lab to study this at the ANU, and we're the only school of sociology in Australia that does laboratory experimental methods. So that's something really unique about ANU, that you can leave psychology and come to sociology and still do experiments here, but nowhere else. And the third project that my work is anchored in is an Australian Research Council Decra project, which is an early career researcher fellowship, and I'm studying ethics in the technology startup sector in Australia, trying to understand how that sector, which is sort of small, generally tightly regulated, how it defines itself ethically, what sorts of practices, regulations, and economies are at play in that. So I've spent the last couple of years interviewing founders, funders, industry representatives, and government representatives to just sort of understand how ethics operates in that sector. And so the students that I've had as an honor supervisor have sort of generally spanned technology and social psychology. I had sort of one student who was doing qualitative work using social psychological theories. I had two students who did sort of very clear technology studies type projects, and then I supervised another one who kind of spanned a few different areas. And one of the things that I think Jeff mentioned in the beginning was, traditionally, people have done honors to go on to a PhD. That's sort of the most obvious path, but it's by no means necessary. So of those who I've supervised, I have a couple of students now working in social services. I have a student in law school, and then a student getting a doctorate at a program in the US. And so there are a lot of forks in the honors road, and all of them lead to good places. But setting aside though what happens at the end of honors, I think one of the messages that have been coming through really clearly with the student accounts of what it's been like to be part of honors, and with what Mitchell was saying, and what all of us I think are saying, is that the experience of honors in and of itself is intrinsically valuable. So yes, it is a pathway, it is a stepping stone to something else, but also it's a really enjoyable experience, a really growth-inducing experience. I think the students that I've sort of seen come through this have grown as scholars, as intellectuals, and also just as people, right? You're taking on this task that feels really big, and it feels really tied to your sense of self. And both of those things are true, and doing it makes you a better, stronger, more interesting, deeper person. There's really, and as I said, at a global level, it's something that a lot of people don't get to do. So I strongly encourage you to sort of dive into it, and even sort of in the hard moments, in the sticky bits, that's where the growth happens. And your supervisor is there to support you, and your cohort is there to support you. So you're making the right choice. Doing it is the right choice, and there's an infrastructure to help you do so successfully.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Lots of stuff to digest, lots of information and concepts. But what I'll do first is, before we go on to some questions, I'll just run through a little bit about a few admin tasks, and then we'll take some questions through the chat, and we'll farm them off to our panelists. So I'll just share my screen. Yeah, can everyone see that? So the honours here, I'll make this brief because I'm sure you're all dying to ask a lot of questions. So yes, honours here, 24 units of coursework, 24 units of thesis, spread out over 1 year. If you do part-time, you would have to get that approved for part-time. So you've got 2 years to do a part-time honours program. How you sort out the thesis and the coursework is entirely based on what's on offer for this semester, what's part of your discipline, what's in the program rules. And if you have any questions about your coursework, please contact your supervisor or your convener. But if you are enrolled in all your coursework, then I'm just putting up the email address, students.cas, for all your thesis code requests. So you've enrolled in your coursework for this semester and you've got 6 units left to go. You would put thesis in to make that up to a full-time load for 6 units. And then next semester you would have 18 units of thesis, 6 units of coursework. It kind of balances out to make 24 and 24. All right, maximum completion is 2 years. You have to have completed your undergraduate degree 2 years ago or less. There's program leave. If you wanted to take that, there's supporting documentation and you have to apply for leave. But also there's part-time study option. If you wanted to withdraw from your program, you would just withdraw as a coursework student. But ultimately, all of these things are available in the Honours and Masters Advanced Guide. So if you go to Google and put in ANU, CASS, Honours, it will come up and you just click on the link and the guide is there. We would have also sent you the guide when you got the invitation to this. So everything is within there. And if it's not in there, please contact students.cas@anu.edu.au. Now, finally, extensions, and there's penalties for late submission, but pretty much the end goal is 5 p.m. on Monday, the 24th of October, 2022 for people starting in this semester. That is the submission date for your thesis. And like I said, things happen, life happens. If you do need to have an extension or whatever, just contact us or have a look in the guide and we are more than happy to help you then. Okay. We'll move on to some questions. I've always thought Zoom is very much like a seance. It's like, are you there? Hello, come in. Who's there? But anyway, so that's why I love this picture. Straight from Victorian England. All right. So we'll move on to just some questions. So yeah, just pop them in the chat if you've got some questions. Yes, and you can also raise your hand too. More than happy to come and let you speak if you wish. Lots of information swirling around in there. Happy to wait. So has anyone had any difficulty enrolling? Would you like to ask any of the panelists a question? Here we are. Are there any sessions for those of us new at ANU on using the ANU systems, Wattle, etc.? That is a really good question. Yeah, so there were some sessions on in orientation week last week, but you can also go, Student Central still run sessions about how to use Wattle and how to enroll if you still have some questions. Getting a student card, it's all on the Student Central sites. If, like I said, there is the library and they do run EndNote sessions. I don't know about Zotero, but I'm sure that you'll be able to figure it out. There's also the Academic Skills and Learning Centre, who run sessions about how to write and how to, you know, get the most out of reading, getting strategies about reading. Have you got anything to say about the Academic Skills and Learning Centre or anything else? Mitchell, Jenny, Rachel, Eleanor, Jeff? No? Nope, all good?
No, only just, yep, don't hold back. You'll find that there are orientations for all those things through that centre.
Cool. Yeah, that's right. Have a look. All the information is there online. Haven't heard anything about starting, so when does it start? So, as in, are we talking about honours? So this is week 1. If you haven't enrolled yet, you should enrol, and then the Waddle site will become available to you. But be in touch with us for thesis. But yeah, be in touch with your supervisor to start developing your plan of attack for how you should plan and organise the next year.
And it will depend. Have a look at your program. So it's, you know, honours is sort of bolted on to your undergraduate in some senses, but they are discrete programs. It's a 1-year program, typically at ANU. And so if you look at the program that you're enrolled in for honours, you'll see, you know, where thesis fits. And what I mean by that is you're doing the equivalent of 4 courses of coursework. So it's 24 units. That could be 4 courses. Sometimes it's 2 12-unit courses. And then you're doing also 24 units of thesis. Now, sometimes that's just one 24-unit thesis course, but sometimes it's split across the 2 semesters. So simply look at the structure for your program. And so whether it's like, many of them, they just say, look, do these coursework courses in semester 1, no thesis, just all coursework. And then semester 2, nothing but thesis. Whereas others structure it. They might do 50-50 of thesis across each semester, or even 25-75 sometimes. So yeah, just check it out. And that'll probably also give you an idea of, if you're doing, you know, 24 units of just coursework in semester 1, you probably won't need as much interaction with your supervisor in semester 1. But students, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think that's typically how people go with it, because the courses are fairly structured and explicit in terms of what's required and, you know, everything else.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Okay, another question from Gil. So, in the speaker's opinion, by what time in the year roughly should you have the first draft of your thesis finished? Good question. What do you reckon, Jenny?
That's a great question. So I would say, I mean, ideally, so generally you'd be doing it chapter by chapter. So I think a better way to think of it, as opposed to like, when should I have the full draft of everything finished, is what are the milestones at which I should have my chapters finished, so that it's less stressful. With all of that said, your supervisor will deeply appreciate if you have a full draft 3 weeks before due date, really a month before due date, but that's asking a lot. But if you can give them 2 weeks to read it closely and then give yourself a final week to revise, that is, I think, a realistic and yeah, that's what I always aim for.
Fab.
And then panic the night before, but until 3 weeks in advance is good.
No, don't panic. Mitchell, got anything to add?
Well, just to be kind of slightly contrary, I guess, but I mean, one of the curious things in the part of the world where I teach, is that the thesis actually comprises not just a document, but a bunch of other stuff. So if you're an artist or a designer, then you're going to be making stuff for and that stuff is actually your honours thesis. And there's also a written component, just termed to the exegesis. So sometimes the thesis is not even a document, but whether it is a document or not, I don't have a hard and fast rule about drafts, but definitely regular kind of supervision around writing. So I think one of the students said this in their very wise words at the opening. Really regular interactions around writing is fantastic, and getting used to a workflow, getting actually comfortable with sharing your writing and comfortable with being engaged in a real dialogue. So having your writing really taken apart and kind of put back together again, or having really deep questions around your writing is a great thing to get used to. And the more often you do that, the more comfortable you get with that, the better. And really, in my experience, often the final draft, like there should be no surprises in the final draft. Your supervisor should be across everything that you're doing. All those arguments should have been well developed already. So really the final draft should be just like, oh, isn't that nice? Here it is all in one place. If there's, my suggestion would be, if there's major new stuff happening in the final draft, then it's probably happening too late. It probably should have already happened so that it's been really worked through, with you and your supervisor. So early draft often, I guess, is my advice.
Excellent. Eleanor, so a question. When did you have your the first draft of your thesis finished? That's not a loaded question.
Yeah, like Jenny said, I worked chapter by chapter. So I would do a chapter and then do my first edit based on what my supervisor had suggested for that chapter, and then move on to the next chapter, do the edit, move on to the next chapter, and then maybe a month or even 5 weeks before I had a full draft. We got a little bit of an extension with COVID, and I was still working to the pre-COVID deadlines. And that way my supervisor would offer some more comments for the whole thing, including chapters, and the way that I edited it was to break it down. So try to do all my edits for the intro, then all my edits for each chapter, and then the conclusion together. Also for cutting words, I would work individually through the chapters to do that as well, because it can get a bit daunting if you have to cut 4,000 words or something and you're not too sure where to start. So that's also why I recommended setting a word count for each section of the writing before you start.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Eleanor. All right, question from Clementine. Maybe for more the School of Art and Design panelists. When do they receive information about studio allocation at the Art and Design campus?
I don't know that detail off the top of my head, but I would suggest approach your supervisor, and also the Visual Arts Honours convener. So that's Ella Barclay in the School of Art and Design. Yeah,
I'm not sure of that either. So yes, excellent. Ella is very approachable. So please approach her. She would know all those details. Okay. Yes, Alexa has just mentioned that if you do have any Wattle access issues, please contact email education.cas@anu.edu.au. They'll be able to help you with any Wattle related questions. Thank you, Gil.
Can I just chip in on that one? I just pasted, our students mentioned, I can't remember who it was, who mentioned that, you've got to kind of keep all the balls in the air in terms of you're very focused on your thesis, but your final honours result, it does depend on all the results from your courses as well. So you've basically got to do, if you really want to get a great honours result, you have to kind of do great in everything. Wow, that's surprising. But what it means is that because, the thing that we refer to with honours is that it's a result. You still get a mark and a grade for things. You got 80, great, you got a HD. That all still exists. But on top of that, you get a result. That's the H1, H2, H3. And to get a really high result, they use that calculation that I just pasted into the window. So you'll see that appear in various places through the documentation, mainly on the thesis courses, but it's just I don't know, it's not to freak you out or anything, just to keep it in mind. But I was just hunting to see if I could get the word limit for because what you'll find is there's reference to various CASS. We own various flavors of the thesis course. I think there's 4, but we use mainly 2, a little bit of 3 and a tiny bit of the 4th one. And mainly that split is between the purely written thesis, and there's a flavor that is used by the art school, music school, and other areas that involve practice. And so I was just quickly trying to find it, because once I locate it, that will stipulate what the word count difference is between an entirely written thesis versus, well, I don't know if we even call an exegesis. We may. An exegesis and a practical work, but it's thought of as a sort of mini thesis that accompanies your practical work.
Yeah, it's the whole package, I think, Jeff, that really constitutes the thesis, because that's the work you're doing. So in other words, if you're doing visual arts or design, your thesis comprises, it's actually one of the hardest things about that program.
Yeah.
It's like 6,500 words. So it's like 1/3 of a kind of conventional honours thesis. And that actually is a significant challenge in developing those documents.
If I can find the link, I will post it.
Great. Marcel had a little small heart attack there. First draft by roughly 24 September. I'm glad that you have changed that to final draft by 24th of September. That is a little anxiety provoking, but anyway. So yeah, okay. So word count, I think Jeff is having a little look for that. Good. Any other questions? Or any other comments from Eleanor, Jenny, or Mitchell, or Jeff? No?
I think I see one more question in the chat. That is a great one.
Oh, yes, of course. Would you like to answer that, Jenny?
Happily, yeah. So is now the time you should be organizing a meeting schedule with your supervisor? Yes.
Plain and simple as that.
Yep. Yeah, get in touch with them.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a, it's an ongoing conversation with your supervisor to help produce this piece of work. So yeah, you will be in touch a lot with your supervisor over the next year. Yeah. Thanks, Claire, and thank you, Jenny. Okie dokes. Well, I think if we have exhausted all questions, please, if you have any further questions, like I said, feel free to contact the CASS student office. We are at students.cas@anu.edu.au. You're welcome to contact the panelists if you wish. Amir, one more question sneaking in. So as one is doing thesis in second semester, when would one be advised to start on it? Jenny, Mitchell.
So if I understand, that's an honours structure where all the coursework components are in semester 1 and all of the thesis components are in semester 2.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, look, I'd say again, talk to your supervisor, because different schools and different areas have different sort of practices around honours. I would definitely advise you that it's great to have, if your supervisor is agreeable to this, it's great to have some meetings around developing your topic and shaping your question and starting your contextual research well in advance of semester 2, because yeah, you want to get into that process. So, but yeah, essentially, I would say I would look at the practices in your area and talk to your supervisor.
Thank you, Jenny. Anything to add?
I mean, same. I think it's probably supervisor by supervisor, but for sure well in advance. And then I think Phoebe has another question that I actually don't know the answer to.
Yeah,
this is like a Jeff question.
Yes, this is a good question, Jeff. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Can you think?
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No, you go.
Oh, sorry. If you look at that Wattle site, I don't know if any of you have logged into it. There's a shared again. So I wouldn't bore you with the structural stuff, but I'm just showing you that you are going to have to navigate these two sort of discrete worlds. There's the college, and we look after thesis, and we run this Wattle site, and that's where everyone submits their written thesis. And we've also got some information there that's useful for everyone. If you click on the big eye, if you, I don't know if you're looking at it, but look, I'll share my screen. Which one is it? This one. Check this out. There's a thesis guide in here. Click this eye. So this is the thesis honours site, and there's this PDF. There it is here, honours and masters guide. And you will find something in here about recycling of material. So I could give you an answer, but I always like to sort of point at the document, because that's all I'm going to use. If you ask me, I'm going to go and look up what is allowed. Typically, it depends on the course level. It has to actually allow it. So the answer is a no. You can't use work that you've developed or submitted elsewhere unless at a course level, like someone out on the thesis course, for example, or the other courses, it actually gives you consent and says, this course allows recycling of material. Yeah. Generally, be cautious. Again, that's one to discuss with, either the course convener or your supervisor, or both, because you definitely don't want to even inadvertently get on the wrong side of it, because, it's one of those things. It's like, where you can just get called for academic misconduct because you have poor citation practices, and you're like, whoops. But yeah, it can have really serious consequences. So same with recycling, it's kind of basically considered a form of self-plagiarization. Now, I know this is a tricky one to police and understand the boundaries of it. I'm sure we could talk about it because, in academia, you constantly do it. It's not like you have to sort of start with a blank canvas every time you develop research. Most of the time, it's actually quite the opposite. You're trying to sort of build on and extend work that you've previously done. So, yeah, one to be careful of. Check the specific course for which you're working is my advice.
Great. Did you have anything else to say, Mitchell, on that? You unmuted for just a moment. No?
No, sorry, that was a unmute.
A false flag, perhaps. All right. Any other questions?
There's a bit more on that site. You'll find out that I don't know. I think this is an interesting subtlety, and I'm sorry, we probably should stop. But that note the examination process. Like, your supervisor is your ally in this. Now, they might give you critical feedback. They might not always say, "Wow, that's the most brilliant thing I've read or seen," or that they might ask you to sort of rework things and challenge you and so forth. But ultimately, they are not assessing you. The external examiners, either from within the university or outside the university, will do that examination. So I think that's really cool, actually. It means that, as a supervisor, you can, you feel like you're much more an ally. Yeah, you're on the team and you're trying to, to help. They will try and work with you to produce the best possible result. So it's great to sort of leverage that relationship. Sure, they're not going to do the work for you, but they will help you as much as they can. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Renee, hello. For part-time honours, there is one semester without coursework or thesis. Is that okay admin-wise for ISIS? Yeah, if you have a semester where there's no enrolment, that's really a taking program leave. So really, if you're doing part-time, you should try and do, as part of your part-time plan, we would have figured out this semester I'm going to do coursework, then thesis, then coursework, thesis, or other permutations of that. But yeah, if you want to just drop us an email, we can have a little bit closer look into your case. Renee, always happy to help. All right, well, this was a good session. So yeah, please, again, contact us, students.CASS, or the education office as well within CASS. We are more than happy to help. No question unturned. So yeah, if anyone else would like to say anything to finish, Eleanor, any final parting words that you could give us?
It's really fun, so enjoy it. You'll probably not get a chance to pursue something you're really interested in all year ever again. Not to be a downer, but no, it's a really good experience. You'll learn a lot and you'll make some great friends.
Fab. That's absolutely right. Mitchell, Jenny, any final words?
No, just to echo that, yeah, just suck all the juices out of it. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful year, and yeah, have a great time.
All those things, the same. Enjoy it.
Fabulous. I think it's nice to have a little bit of now that we are a bit more face-to-face, it's nice to have a little bit of a cohort with your fellow honours students too. So I think that that's important to recognise, just to have a little bit of fun, you know.
I'm just going to add one more thing, and like definitely get everything out of it you can, enjoy it to the best of your ability, and don't wait too long. If you hit a hurdle, if there's bumps, there will be wrinkles and bumps and challenges. Don't leave it too long. Try and be proactive and ping people for help, advice, etc.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everyone again. I hope you have a wonderful first semester. Please be in touch if you need any help. We are happy to help, as I said. So yes, take care everyone, and happy writing.